upon hour, the number of children being killed in Gaza is rising. We all know how politically complex.
Hello, everyone. The camera is on in the middle row and over here. So if you would like to leave, we'd request you to leave through the back door. Please don't exit out of here. Thank you.
Can everyone please remain silent as Aisha comes up for the Quran recitation and translation?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cambridge Legal Conference. We'd first like to start off the event with Quran recitation. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات وما في الأرض ولا يعوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. Allah, there is no God but Him, the living, the eternal. He neither slumbers nor sleeps. To Him belong all that is in the heavens and the earth. Who can intercede with Him without His permission? He knows what is before them and what is behind them. He cannot gain access to anything out of His knowledge except what He pleases. His throne is more vast than the heavens and the earth, and guarding of these both does not fatigue Him. He is the exalted, the supreme. Thank you.
Can everyone please rise for the national anthem? For anyone who requires the Wi-Fi user and password, it is currently on the screen. You can take a picture or log into the Wi-Fi right now. Next, we would like to call upon Aryan Asad, our law teacher and the person who made this entire event possible.
Hey guys, so The funny thing is, I actually don't have a speech at all, because until literally today morning, when I saw the first group of kids come in, this event was not real for me at all. But then when I saw them come in, I was like, oh crap, this is actually real, and I need to actually start preparing for this. So I have one sheet of paper which has a single line on it that says, I didn't want to take law. And that is genuinely the thing that I wanted to talk about in whatever time I have. I was a literature student. When I graduated from this school, I wanted to do lit. I wanted to go to NYU AD and pursue a career in English literature, read about Shakespeare. And then my parents, in true Desi parent fashion, were like, how many toilets are you going to clean with a literature degree? So they told me the next best practical thing was to do law. And it was an accident, it was a mistake, but it was one of the greatest mistakes I ever made, and I will never regret that. I've devoted my life to the law now. I now teach law. So it was not a regret at all. But the thing for me was that I was very lucky, right? For me, that mistake turned out to be like a happy little accident. And students around the world are not that lucky. There's a lot of students right now, some of you maybe, who could be future lawyers, professionals, the best in their field, but you wouldn't know that until you try. And that's why we have the Cambridge Legal Conference. We give you guys, or we're planning this project, is to give you guys the opportunity to try. Now, I made a legal conference because I'm a law teacher, but my goal with this project is to start the ball rolling and start getting other schools to maybe have a business conference, a STEM conference, an engineering conference, a medicine conference, you know, a conference much like CLC for every single field, so every single individual who's trying to get into a specific career can get a taste of what that career is like. Because for me, I found my true calling by pure luck. And I don't want to bestow that same fate upon everyone else. I didn't get a chance to make an educated decision. I had to take a risk. And that's why we have CLC. So I just want to conclude this event by saying that this is the first time that we've ever done something like this. Usually, kids like you, I'm sure most of you signed up thinking this is going to be like an MUN or something. It's not. But it's the first time we've ever done something like this, and I have to thank you guys for coming, because there would be no point of me giving a speech to an empty auditorium. So thank you so much for taking the chance with us, taking the chance with CLC, taking a chance with Cambridge, and coming for this conference. And I really, really hope you guys enjoy, and I really, really hope you guys learn something. Two things can happen at the end of this conference. Either you say, I love the law, I want to become a lawyer, and that is my path, that is my dream. Or you come out and say, I hate the law, I never want to look at it again. Either way, we've done our job as the core team or the team members, organizers of CLC. That is our job today, simply to inform you on what the law is like. So without further ado, please enjoy. And I would like to call upon my own professor, Miss Samantha Jane Roberts, to come up on stage to give a talk, hopefully better prepared than me, about Middlesex, about studying law in university, and what being a lawyer is like. So please, everyone, have a round of applause for her. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for that, Ariane, one of my favorite ever law students, and I'm not just saying that because we're here today. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. As you can see, my name's Samantha. I am the program coordinator for all of the undergraduate law programs at Middlesex University's Dubai campus. I'm a senior lecturer in law, and I'm the head of the Juris Centre of Excellence for Legal Education and Training. Middlesex University Dubai is the largest international university in Dubai. We have over 5,000 students from more than 120 nationalities currently studying as members of our global family. I'm delighted to be here today on behalf of Middlesex and as the university partner for the Cambridge Legal Conference. This is such an amazing initiative, and it's so wonderful that you get this opportunity to engage with the law now. So thank you so much to the faculty and to the student organisers of the conference for giving me this opportunity to address you all. It is wonderful to see so many young people here today who are interested in learning about the law. I was just 11 years old when I went to my parents and said, I am going to be a lawyer. I just watched Legally Blonde, and I fancied myself as the next Elle Woods. Now, for many of you, this might be a very outdated reference, but I'm sure lots of you have seen Suits, and you really identify with the fantasy that I had, where I would be wearing a really chic suit, I would be dazzling a courtroom with my wit, charm, and my verbal gymnastics. By the time I was 16 years old, I was still committed to pursuing a career in law, and I'd actually started to make decisions that would help me on that path. I'd always enjoyed problem solving, reading, and of course, arguing with anyone. My parents, my friends, mostly my teachers. So I was certain I was equipped with all of the skills necessary to succeed as a lawyer. I was the chair of the high school debate club, I was the captain of my rugby team, and I was a member of the European Youth Parliament Forum. I studied English, history, politics, and economics at A-level. I was committed to pursuing a career in law, and I knew that these subjects and these extracurricular activities would help me to develop the skills I needed, skills in critical analysis and verbal reasoning. These would help to prepare me for my study of the law. However, when I actually reached university, not everyone had done the same thing as me, and people had studied a wide variety of subjects. And in fact, these days, law firms are looking for people with different backgrounds. The law in technology, the law in artificial intelligence is ever developing. And so if you have knowledge and understanding of coding and computers, this will only add to your value as a potential lawyer. But what law students tend to have in common is the desire to learn about the law and to have a commitment to understanding the notion of justice, or parents who have a desire for their children to learn about the law and justice. Now, law actually touches our lives every single day. You buy a ticket to the movies, that's a contract. Those terms and conditions that you always click, I accept, before ever actually reading them, yes, another contract. But more than this, law shapes our society, law shapes our individual lives. It is not this complex and distant entity that we may think that it is. It impacts absolutely everything that we do. And to me, that's fascinating. When the law has so much effect on our daily lives, should we not all care how the law is made, who it is made by, and why we, as individuals, choose to follow the law? As a legal academic, these are the questions I ask in my research, and these are the questions I encourage my students to ask as they pursue the study of law. Understanding what justice is and how we can live in a more just world is the foundations to understanding law. Whilst many of my former students have gone on to practice as lawyers, this is not the only option available to you if you choose to study law. When undertaking a law degree, you do not learn the law. There is no such thing as the law, because the law is always changing. This is what makes it so exciting. The law must always adapt to keep up with the needs of society. As technologies advance, the law must respond. As a student of law, you will learn how to find, understand, and use law. You will learn to reflect, to analyze, and to persuade. The transferable skills acquired through the study of law are sought by employers in many different fields, and we've seen our graduates go on to work in technology, compliance, government roles, and loads of other areas as well. Many of you are here today, I've been told, because you are interested in studying law. From Ariane's speech, I think maybe that means more of your parents are interested in you in studying law, but do not despair. The most common question I am asked at open days is, why would I study English law here in Dubai? If I can't be a lawyer and go to courts here in Dubai, why would I bother trying to become a lawyer? Well, we've been running our program for nearly 10 years, and we have more than 600 law students, and we've produced so many graduates that are already making significant contributions to the legal field. Just this week, 4 of the Middlesex alumni were honoured by Modern Counsel in their 35 under 35 list, which is a testament to the kind of career you can expect to have. Today, you're going to learn key principles from English law. And English common law is what governs the majority of international commercial contracts. This means that English qualified lawyers are in high demand here in the region. Both the DIFC and ADGM have their very own common law systems, and their courts are based on English law. Areas such as intellectual property, data privacy, climate, fashion and sports law, all of these areas are developing right here in the region. And Dubai is an international hub for business, creativity, and innovation. And there are boundless opportunities to begin and grow your legal career right here. And if you choose to study in Dubai, you ensure that you maintain your connection with the region whilst gaining exposure to local experience and acquiring the knowledge and skills that you would acquire if you were abroad, but you get to also experience the region locally. Also, if you graduate with an English common law degree, you can go on to practice and qualify in New York, in Australia, and many other common law jurisdictions around the world. So, please take advantage of this amazing opportunity that you have today and begin to decide whether or not law is right for you. I cannot praise the team here for this amazing initiative and this opportunity, and Middlesex University is really excited to partner with them on the legal conference. And I'm very excited to let you know that we will be organising a follow-up event on our campus here in Dubai. So pay attention today, because everything that you learn, you'll be able to put into practice, as we will be inviting you to our campus for a day of competitions. We will share more information with your teachers, and you'll get your invitations in the future. But do enjoy today, learn as much as you can, and have a really great day. Thank you very much.
Sorry for that. Finally, a name to my face. Hello, everyone. My name is Tamir Fernando. And before I get into the flowery stuff, a few safety precautions. In the unlikely event of a fire, please do not panic. Use the exit routes in front of you on either side of the auditorium and make your way to the main entrance, which is the designated assembly point. You should not stop to collect your belongings and should proceed directly to the exit route, making your way to the closest assembly point. Now, let's begin. The Cambridge Legal Conference aims to bridge the gap of high school students aspiring to study law and their prospective careers. We have the common assumption that activities like debate, MUN, or novels of George Orwell are what we need in order to navigate our way to an undergraduate degree in law, or even a career itself. The reality is, law is representative of much more. Now, we've heard so many at the age of 13, at the age of 16, at the age of 11, but let me talk about my story. At the age of 10, I, alongside my friends, assumed that a loud, confident tone is all that's needed as a lawyer to win a case for your client. Soon after that, I was proven wrong by Mr. Aryan Asad, my law teacher. And that was our primary inspiration for this conference, which was you guys, students that have been envisioning themselves as Elle Woods or Harvey Specter or Mike himself, proving the innocence of a defendant or otherwise. So before I get into a whole other tangent, let me talk about the 3 arms of our conference. We've got our workshops, where the procedure will be expanded upon shortly by a head of workshops, Nidhi Shetty. Nidhi, say hello. She's over there, she's sitting in the corner. And then we've got a panel discussion with some of the top legal experts in the UAE, people that are in our front row right over here. And finally, we've got the mock trial, where students of the Cambridge Law class in years 12 and 13 will be either defending or prosecuting our well-beloved character, our defendant, Manav, the head of prefects. I'm Tamira Fernando, and it's an honor to host you here. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I don't get a slide, but I did get an extremely warm welcome from Tamira. I'm Nidhi Shetty, and I am an AS Law student here at Cambridge. And I was given the opportunity to head workshops. So when this idea came across, I was more confused than interested. I was wondering how we're going to explain to a bunch of people who have no background in law what law is about, because as a very late joining student, I didn't understand either. But I would like to congratulate all the workshop heads, because they truly have something special planned for you guys. Rather than explaining it, I'm going to let the workshops speak for themselves. Just a few things. Each and every one of the participants have a wristband with a colored sticker on it. Everyone can take a look at your stickers. But these stickers signify the group that you will be in for the rest of the conference. Let's start with blue. So your blue sticker means your first workshop will be crime investigation. Very, very interesting, I promise. Green stickers will proceed to legal matchmaking, yellow to moral dilemmas, red to Netflix and law, and black to witness examination. Just remember, if you get confused, there are rotations posted all around the campus for you to go to whichever legal workshop that you are advised to. Now, again, I would like to call upon Tamira Fernando. Tamira, say hi. Tamira Fernando will also be hosting our panel session for today. And our panel consists of the most inspirational individuals, I would say. Leading lawyers and legal experts that have taken the time out of their day to share their experiences with us. As I call upon our panelists, can we please have a huge round of applause for these amazing individuals? First, we have Ms. Karishma Sukraj. She's a member of the legal team at DHL, which is a world-leading logistics company, and she specializes in the trade of shipments and goods. Next, we have Mr. Richard Imran Ding. Mr. Richard is a partner and the head of corporate practice at AI Madani and Al Shamsi. He has also worked in the legal field, not only in Dubai, but also in Malaysia and London. He provides legal advice on investment and business acquisitions. Next, we have Mr. Sunil Agrawal. Mr. Sunil has collaborated with legal firms he knew and has co-founded a legal consultancy company since. He has become a huge part of the legal field and has 32 years of experience to show for it. We next have Miss Amani Ijami. She's actually a part of our Cambridge family, and she is the senior legal counsel at Al Balushi and Al Marshada Law. She has a specialization in human rights and democratization in Africa, and has published multiple works in the legal field with great skills in dispute assessment. Next, we have our one and only Middlesex representative, Miss Samantha. Miss Samantha forgot to mention that she completed her Bachelor's of Law and Master's of Medical Ethics in Law at King's College, London. Over 12 years of teaching experience, Miss Samantha has been leading the undergraduate law and politics programs at Middlesex University, Dubai since 2018. Can we have a huge round of applause for our panelists?
Hello? Okay. Hello, panelists. It's an honor to have you here. As you can see, I have a very big, chunky laptop on my lap with a bunch of questions that I've prepared for the past 2 weeks. Over here on your left, you should be able to find a mic, and you can switch it on once I call upon your name. Let's begin with Ms. Karishma. As a DHL lawyer, I have a big question to ask. How does your role as a lawyer or part of the legal team at DHL specifically relate to maritime law, given the company's involvement in logistics and shipping?
Okay, hi Tamira, hi everybody. So, okay, firstly, before I talk about maritime law, I think it's very important to explain to everybody what will a lawyer be doing at DHL. I mean, DHL is a courier company, it moves goods, and you must be wondering, why would they need a lawyer? Okay, so I'm what you call an in-house counsel, and you get this at all of your large corporate companies. So all of your big corporate companies would have their own legal team, and we are called in-house legal counsel. So that means we would do everything that a lawyer does, but for a specific commercial company. So that's how I am at DHL. So now you must wonder, what is this maritime law? So maritime law deals with all sorts of shipping, logistics. It's a little bit of trade law, a little bit of corporate law. You know, the big ships that you would see on the ocean, it's how you navigate those ships, how you move airplanes in the air, how you move cargo around. And the interesting part about maritime law is it's governed by international regulations. So it's treaties that are signed between different countries, and when these treaties are signed between different countries, what you would do in India, South Africa, UAE, England is governed by all of the same rules and regulations. So once you do maritime law, you could basically practice anywhere in the world under the same rules and regulations. Now, where that fits in to DHL is that we move around everything from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world, and this is why a maritime lawyer would sit in a logistics company.
Thank you so much, Ms. Karishma. Now we will be going on to Mr. Sunil. We had a conversation regarding the human aspect of legal work. I found your perspective in that conversation very intriguing. Could you please expand on that?
Thank you very much, my dear students. I'm glad to be here. I started my career as a trader at the age of 21 in Dubai. And I used to deal in steel and metals. Around 5 years later, I realized that steel and metals was very strong, but law was even more stronger. It is law which maintains the society, which maintains rules and regulations for everyone to work in a balanced manner. There was a case which happened against my company, which we fought very well, and I realized that most of the businessmen in Dubai, most of the traders, they cannot comprehend they're all busy making money. They do not know the legal side of it in terms of maintaining a balance of what the UAE law is about. They suffer, or they try to misuse the law to make more out of the trade. It is at this time that I realized there is a big gap between the business community and the legal fraternity itself. Hence, I invested in a company called Consultancy Council. Of course, I am not a lawyer, but there are about 4 local lawyers who are part of this company. The human aspect is so important. A judge usually makes a decision which is very subjective. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. So it's how you narrate, how your narrative is presented in front of the judge, makes him decide his decisions, his judgments. And that's the human aspect. If you cannot give a proper narrative to your subject, you are going to lose, irrespective.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sunil. I noticed the word narratives and judgments. Now, I would like to ask Ms. Amani a question. As a holder in master's with a specialization in human rights, could you please expand upon or share a specific case or project that had a significant impact on protecting or promoting human rights itself?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this amazing conference. It's okay? And hi for everybody. Actually, my experience, as I told you, is in litigation of more than 25 years. Litigation and corporate everything. I have started in Sudan, then recently moved to Dubai to contribute in establishing a new firm with a local lawyer. But my passion in human rights is really, and I have a master, and I worked with NGOs in Sudan. This area is very interesting. However, many countries, they don't have like local human rights laws. If we take into consideration there are so many violations of human rights going on in different countries. However, there is the human rights law is just consists of international treaties, international agreements, generally signed between different countries. Some of them are multilateral treaties. The problem with human rights is the application, the enforcement of human rights. So now we have, with the development of international criminal law, they have the International Criminal Court in the Netherlands. That is a very important development. Although they have so many challenges in enforcement of this, because they don't have international criminal courts, they don't have police, they don't have enforcement mechanism. So that is a challenge for human rights and international humanitarian law. International human rights law is may be very interesting for those students who are interested in working for international organizations, for UN. All this is very important for them to have knowledge and to have so many research. They have to do so many research in this area so that they will be contributing in the human rights in these organizations, I mean.
Thank you so much, Ms. Amani. I heard that you expanded upon something such as how police and the system itself kind of is a method or a mechanism of safeguarding the public, and that's one of the foundations of human rights itself. It's the enforcement of it. So that's another question I would like to ask Ms. Samantha. You talked about, and I quote, the notion of justice in your keynote speech. What do you define justice as? Is it this whole rabbit hole you enter when trying to break down the word justice itself? Is it the systematic process of the criminal justice system? What is it?
Thank you very much. It's a really interesting question. Yes, I'm back again. Hello. I think when we think about justice, and this is really the case for the majority of legal cases, there are elements. You have to think about the merits, so you think about the substance of a case and the substance of the law, but then you also have to consider procedure. And so justice lay in both the substance of the law, but also in the procedures that govern the creation, the implementation, and the governing. And so, as you said, policing, this is used to enforce law, and we respect police officers as part of our social contract. We abide by the law as citizens because of a notion of a social contract. But then what do we do when the law that we're supposed to follow feels unjust to us? What do we do when the practices of implementing that law feel unjust? What do we do when we see international law, human rights law, criminal law, even commercial and corporate law failing justice? And that is why the study of law, I'm a legal academic, I don't practice the law, I study the law, I research the law, I teach the law. And for me, one of the most important things about understanding law is, where does it come from? Why do we choose to follow it? And how can the law shape our world to be a better place for everyone? And unfortunately, in many places all over the world, the law is designed and implemented for the benefit of a few. And so when you study the law, you'll be introduced to a really important concept called the rule of law, which is this idea about how the law should be for the benefit of everyone. No one is above the law, and it's about access to justice. And so I think that often we get bogged down in Harvey Specter and Mike, and we think about commercial cases, or we think about even, defending an innocent person on the stand. But the law goes so much further than that. We have to even consider where those laws come from and how they are implemented and who is implementing them. And we have to consider the way that we as students of the law, because we are, I know that my colleagues on the panel will agree with me, they are still students of the law. We're always still having to reflect and learn, but how we can shape the law, how we can do the best for our clients, because that is our job as lawyers, is to represent our clients in a way that if they were able, they would represent themselves. And that, to me, is what justice means.
Thank you so much. Well, clearly justice itself is a very big web of things that we don't know, and it's a lot of uncertainty surrounding it. But Ms. Samantha, could you kind of guide me and kind of explain to me, we have democracies, we have the rule of law, we've got Dicey's 3 elements of the rule of law. But what makes these democracies fail? Is it the leadership? Is it the lack thereof of it? What is it?
I think that many of the challenges that societies are facing in different jurisdictions all over the world has a lot to do with engagement. And for example, you say about democracies, but the whole point of a democracy is that the leadership and those who make the law, the legislature, those who implement the law, the government, the executive, are supposed to be in service to the people. But unfortunately, the people are not always engaged. And it means that the people are not always educated or interested. And there's a great deal of apathy in many societies. And that is why I always talk about the need for especially young people to be involved, to be interested. If you want to live in a just world, you need to understand how justice is, even whatever justice means to you, but you have to understand where justice comes from and how we can serve justice. And that is usually through participation. That is through becoming educated and through having a voice. And you guys are in the most privileged position of all, because you are young and you have so much left to learn, and you can do anything that you want to do. You have this boundless opportunity to actually shape the world around you. And from my perspective, one of the best ways to shape the world is to be involved with the creation, the scrutiny, the application of the law. Because as I said in my speech, the clothes that you're wearing, your smartphone, the mode of transport you took to get here today, all of these things are touched by law. The cosmetics that you're wearing, the makeup you buy, every stage of that creation, design, protection of the intellectual property, sanctions, these are all governed by law. The law is everything. And so understanding it, learning it, all of this participation is what will serve justice. And we need to encourage more people to engage with, understand, and bring their voice to the table.
Thank you so much, Ms. Samantha. Now, speaking of justice, Mr. Richard, can you talk about your experience with justice within your field? For context, Mr. Richard is specializing within the field of corporate law, particularly in M&A, joint ventures, and working with tech startups. So can you talk about your definition of justice in that sense?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is a really tough question, Tamira, because in corporate law, the concept of justice is slightly different from what we understand for human rights, for courts. In terms of justice for corporate law, if we're talking about a typical corporate law transaction, which is where, say, Imar, the big company here, would like to buy Nakil, the other big company here, the just doctrine would be to make sure, for example, all the people keep their jobs when you buy the company. That's, in my mind, probably about it. Because corporate law is capitalistic. And that's the reality of the situation. You are doing it because you want to build a business, and building a business requires certain profit motivation is one. And as a result of that, unfortunately, some people could lose their jobs. We call them redundancies. We don't need 2 or 3 people doing the same job of one person. We might try to replace them and move them around. But that's really the limit of it. Corporate law brings you to a very difficult realm of profit motivation, business. You try and be fair in your dealings, so there are fairness in dealings. When you do a corporate transaction, you have to tell the truth, so you don't misrepresent the counterparties of what your company is. So for example, if your company is worth 1 million dirhams, you don't tell them it's worth 10. So you be very open and frank about what you are selling. So that's the fairness in a transaction. You've got to be open, you've got to have clarity and certainty and openness. And then you can make an informed decision whether or not you would like to participate in a transaction. So it's like if you go to a shop, you go to Apple and you want to buy a Mac. You know the Mac is of a certain quality, but if the guy in the Mac shop tells you, buy the other one because this one is defective, you know that you cannot buy this Mac. You have to go for the other one because it's been open to you that it's been defective. But you go, it's 1,000 dirhams cheaper. Mom would be okay with that. I could live with that defect. That's okay. You buy the defective product. That's fine. But you know it. And that is, because you know it, I think justice has been served in a transaction.
Perfect, thank you. That's a very good answer. But now we've seen justice in the sense of being reinvented within the premises of corporate law, how it's capitalistic in nature as a result of it. Ms. Samantha, I'm going to trouble you again with another question in terms of justice. Justice in context to corporate law. Recently in my law class by Mr. Aryan Asad, we were studying about the Consumer Rights Act, or UCTA, which is a funny name and a funny abbreviation for the Unfair Contract of Terms Act. Terms of Contract Act.
Unfair Contract Terms Act.
Unfair Contract Terms Act. Apologies. And so in that regard, we would say, yes, it is capitalistic in nature, but there's also another side of corporate law. Like, for example, how claimants and individuals in this regard would be able to find their sense of justice, but just in a different way, in monetary terms, right? Could you expand upon that, please?
Absolutely. So there are many areas of law, such as consumer law, but also, as Richard was saying, governing redundancies, people's jobs, which we would call employment law. And these all fall within, commercial. Normally when we talk about corporate or commercial law, we're talking about representing businesses. We're talking specifically about businesses. But if you work for a business, if you're a consumer, one of the biggest challenges that you'll face is that there's a real imbalance of power between yourself and the company. And so a great deal of law has been created to intervene in order to try and address that imbalance of power. The Consumer Rights Act is about bringing rights for consumers, because if you're sold something that turns out to be faulty, or even worse, you buy something, you buy an iPhone, and the iPhone charger explodes, and you're injured or your house is damaged, what are you going to do? The company's got a great deal more money than you. It's got what we would call in law deeper pockets, and it's probably going to have a better lawyer than you as well. But consumer law is there to help you. It will help you get access to what we call remedies. And those remedies, as you say, are often going to be monetary. Even when somebody does lose their job in a merger, redundancy payment in English law is required by law. You will be given financial compensation that is designed to help you in that time between jobs. And so even if we're not just thinking about human rights law and things like that, the law is there to intervene when there is an imbalance in power. And even talking about commercial law, for example, I think that justice is also served when we think about competition law. We're talking about two really large companies merging. Well, there are certain rules against that, because the problem is if two big companies merge, they have the potential to form what we would call a monopoly. And if we have a monopoly, then they can set the price whatever they like, and the price of everything increases. And so the law will actually intervene when it comes to competition in that way, to make things better for consumers, to make things better for customers. Because if there are lots of different companies competing, Apple competes with Samsung, so they have to, have a certain price point that's competitive. If Apple acquired Android, the price of everything, all the smartphones, is just going to go up. So we have laws to even preserve things like competition. So it's about serving society. It's not just human rights or medical law and all of these fields that do that. Even commercial law or laws designed for employees, for consumers. But even these laws protect sellers. Even these laws protect employers. As an employee, you have all these rights that protect you from being arbitrarily dismissed from your job, making sure you get payments if you're made redundant. But equally, the law says that you cannot do something against your employer. You cannot steal their confidential information. You cannot set up a business that's in competition with them using anything you learned or the contacts or stealing their employees. There's all of these laws there as well. And it's about balancing rights and obligations within society.
Thank you so much, Ms. Samantha. But that's the thing. When we are in litigation, we can assure in some regard that the law guards us. But there are alternate disputes, resolutions that we would go to, such as arbitration, where there's an indefinite or a very obvious imbalance of power. And the phrase we like to use is deeper pockets. Mr. Ariana Asad has constantly told us to use it in our essays. And we constantly refer to that. And the issue is, how is the law going to protect these individuals in arbitration? Because we don't have, we've got an arbitrator that would obviously be looking at, but we don't necessarily have a deep lens or a camera or essentially the worry or the fear of repercussions from it, right? So how do we kind of mitigate the issue of this imbalance of power or these companies using it to this advantage and kind of exploiting consumer rights in that regard?
So I think that all dispute resolution does have, as I said, procedure. So governing procedure is all part of justice. Now, in every type of dispute resolution, whether we're talking about mediation, arbitration, litigation, they have their advantages and disadvantages. Arbitration has its advantages because the companies involved And it's really going to be companies in arbitration or maybe against states. You're rarely going to find a consumer situation in arbitration. But they maintain their privacy, which is the allure of arbitration, because if you end up in litigation, a lot of that's going to become public record. So you want to maintain your privacy. But as you say, you then hand over the power to an individual arbitrator. And of course, there are risks in terms of corruption or bias, but that is why arbitrators are appointed after they gain experience, after they develop a reputation. And so I think that's always the danger with something like law and something like justice, that we will find bias, we will find corruption, but that's part of studying and reforming the law, is how do we tackle these very real issues, no matter the avenue for dispute resolution, how do we tackle these issues that actually stand in the way of justice? And so different clients will, your job as a lawyer is to advise them, and you'll tell them the advantages and you'll tell them the disadvantages of whichever mechanism they're going to follow. And that's your job, but it's up to the client to make the decision. Your job as a lawyer is to take instructions and to do what your client actually wants, but you just have to equip them with the knowledge to make that decision. But of course, yeah, corruption, bias, all of these things are real, and I think that it's only with a development of a more ethical and a more open access to justice and a more open legal systems that we can actually ensure that, you know, these things don't continue to happen.
So if I may just add, so arbitration is to find a solution. So yes, there might be bias, but when you go into a matter, big commercial companies, and you go into arbitration, and something I learned very earlier on in my career is nobody can take away the facts. So if you've done your research, if you've put the facts on the table, and you believe in the facts that you're presenting, whether to a biased arbitrator or not, the facts speak for themselves. So as a lawyer or as a person that's going into any negotiation, if you've done your research, if you know and believe in the honesty and transparency on the facts that you are going to present to a third party, to an arbitrator, to the opposing counsel, if you believe in that, then nobody can take that away from you, even if it's somebody that's biased and in favor of one party.
Thank you, Ms. Karishma. That's a very good answer. But my question is, why do miscarriages of justice still exist? I'm an idealist. I'm a student. I still haven't gone out into the real world or seen the atrocities of the real world. And so I would think in the manner that, yes, justice is right, facts are there, and in some way, shape, or form, no matter how much time it takes, we're going to find a solution. The person that is deserving will always get the rights that they deserve. But miscarriages of justice still exist, and that's our reality, right? There's going to be case law that even I learned where the judgments would end up being repealed or would end up being redacted away, and they'd have to go to another court and reconclude on their decisions in that regard. So why does that exist?
So decisions and law are not made by robots just yet. So it's human beings that write the law. It's human beings that make these regulations and acts. It's a human being that's sitting on a judge's panel. And a human being comes with emotions, their own ideals, their own opinions. So as much as they try to enforce what might have been written in black and white by a certain group of individuals, they do come with their own opinions. They do come with the bias. But when you become a lawyer or go further on to become an advocate, a judge, you take an oath of honor. Similar to the medical field, you take an oath of honor to be honest, to be transparent, to not sit there with bias, to not sit there and bring your own personal beliefs and opinions into a court. I mean, a lot of the time we get, I speak to younger kids. I've got 2 kids in the school, actually. I've got 2 daughters in year 8 and year 9. and their friends want to be criminal lawyers, you know, and you tell them, okay, do you realize that you would probably be defending the criminal, right? And I mean, think of you and your ethics and your morals. Do you really want to go into a court and defend a criminal? But that would be your job, and that would be a decision. Do you do it without bias? Probably yes, because this is now your job. You're now a criminal lawyer, and you have to go in there and say, okay, it is my job to defend this person. To go there with facts to say, okay, maybe it was self-defense. Maybe they did something criminally, but they had no intention or malicious intent to do this act. So it's a lot about becoming a lawyer is taking a lot of your own beliefs, your own personal opinions, and sometimes just laying it down and say, this is a career, this is my job, and I would have to do this.
Thank you so much, Ms. Karishma. That's a very good answer. But in that regard, this is going to end up in a tangent and lead us into somewhere. But when we say, it's a philosophy, right? The beliefs and the morals we have, we inhibit it, and we also should exhibit it. But when we have a career, like, for example, a criminal lawyer that's defending these criminals, not prosecuting, but defending these criminals, aren't we showing the world or showing this doctrine to these individuals that, to some degree, a career over exceeds our morals in that regard, right? Sometimes we need to place it down. It's this moral quandary that we enter, and that's something that we'll be looking at in Moral Dilemmas, our next workshop. But it's like this big back and forth, right? There's always that, yes, this is a career, we need to provide, right? At the end of the day, on a very raw level, we as individuals, we need money to survive. But is it worth being able to defend these individuals that we know are wrong, to get a sentence or to find a way to negotiate, not necessarily negotiate, or defend the potential guilt of a criminal? Like, how are we going to navigate our way through that?
I think I just want to address something you just said there, and you said the potential guilt. We're approaching this potentially from the wrong angle, because just because a person has been accused of a crime, that does not mean that they are guilty. And when we actually think about defending accused persons, it's not a case of it's our job to prove their innocence or to convince the others that they're innocent. The prosecution has the job of proving that person's guilt. And in the court of public opinion maybe, or when someone is accused of something, we'll often go, oh, there's no smoke without fire, this person must be guilty. Or even if you know that somebody has committed a potentially criminal act, as my esteemed colleague on the panel said, well, maybe it was an accident, or maybe they're mentally unwell, or maybe they had a terrible experience as a child that has impacted their lives. And so everyone accused deserves a defense. And that defense may not mean standing up and saying, they're innocent, they weren't even in the room, it wasn't them. It may be mitigating for them and saying, yes, my client did this, but they caused someone's death when driving, but it wasn't their fault. They're actually medically unwell. They had a hypoglycemic episode, so there's no intent there. They didn't mean to hurt anyone. And this can be the case in so many areas, and we often presume that people are guilty, but even if they have done something, there are so many unjust criminal laws in the world. There are places in the world where people end up on death row. There are places in the world where if you commit 3 crimes, you have to spend the rest of your life in prison, even if those crimes were stealing bread to feed your children. So even I think that criminal defense lawyers get a really bad reputation, but actually they're doing a very public good, because there are far too many people who are sent to prison. There are far too many people existing in prisons who have not had good representation, that probably shouldn't be there. And you said it yourself, miscarriages of justice. There are people who've been wrongly convicted based on false evidence. And it's not always the lawyers, it's not always the judges. There's a huge scandal happening in the UK right now with the post office, where something like 4,000 postmasters have been convicted or otherwise pursued for civil damages based on software that was faulty. And it's been covered up because the head of the post office didn't want to damage their reputation. The government didn't want to damage their reputation. They didn't want to get involved. And so there's so many other things at play when it comes to miscarriages of justice. And often it's to do with perception and reputations, or even the prosecutor. You know, they really want to nail someone for this case. They really want to make sure they get a conviction, and it doesn't matter the cost. And so don't think of criminal law or criminal defense law as this, you know, people who are morally corrupt, that are just in it for the money. Many people who work, criminal defense lawyers are not paid well. They're actually being paid a great deal less than corporate lawyers, for example. And so what they're doing is a public good. It is not this, they're not these morally devoid characters that the television may have us think.
Thank you, Ms. Samantha. That is a very good answer. Now, you pointed out one word that I really liked, perception. We've got the prosecution and defense in a court. Let me paint the scenario. Do you believe that within the court of justice, these individuals or even society itself have this perception of the defense, and they already have this conception in mind that, oh, this individual is already guilty, right? And that goes into kind of create a reputation for this individual that's defending themselves, right? And they just, in that regard, like, is there an imbalance of power? Will the prosecution always have the advantage over the defense within the court of law? How's that?
I'm going to defer to one of my other panelists simply because I'm sick of hearing my own voice. So does anybody else want to weigh in on this question?
I think we've got to take a little step back on a criminal case, for example. There will always be two sides to a criminal matter. The one side is where the prosecutor will prosecute if there is, for example, there's a theft. The criminal law, depending on which jurisdiction you come from, will either have it in written law or in case law to give you the elements of a crime. So it's like A plus B plus C plus D equals crime. So if these elements are met based on the prosecution's investigation with the police, the prosecution is then likely under an obligation to prosecute. They do not look normally at what are the factors that vitiate the crime. For example, mental incapacity, doing out of necessity. If you're stealing bread to feed your kids because they're starving, yes, you stole bread, but was your intention to, for example, deprive the other party of the bread? Your intention was to feed your kids. Is that a crime? We don't know. And the answer to that is we don't know, which is why the defense is important, to raise these points to a judge who will then exercise judicial discretion on the accuracy of it. What you want to prevent also with the defense is malicious prosecution. For example, in certain places, you see political prisoners, political people getting imprisoned. We don't know why they get imprisoned. Yes, if they committed a crime, definitely. But it's malicious if it's not public. So balancing that is the job of the judge. And the judge can be overruled by parliament, by written law, that's fine. But the human element is very important. And in that regard, I think there is a balance. That's how the balance is achieved in justice. Somebody will say one side, and there is always the other side of the coin to negate. And then you will get some form of justice. Whether this person, yes, let's say you stole bread to feed your kids. That's a crime, that's a theft. Maybe the maximum prison term for that is 10 years. The judge will say, hang on a minute, yes, he did this, it's a crime, 1 day in jail. So the crime sentence is done, but the impact is lowered tremendously because of the judicial nature of the judge, the justice that he wants to impart. So that's how the balancing is done. If it's all artificial intelligence, the poor parent who stole the bread will be in jail for 10 years. So that human nature is also very important in law, human sensitivity.
Thank you, Mr. Richard. Speaking of human sensitivity, or even the aspect in which these cases work, right? Let's talk on a political level. For example, a government, or let's look into why these cases or these judges at their discretion might publicize something or might publicize a case itself. If we're going to look at a president or someone in a line of power that kind of exceeds their line of duty, the reason why we essentially would publicize or refrain from publicizing is to protect civilians. Is that the reason, or is it to show or to propagate the ideal that this is not okay? This individual exceeding their line of duty with a position of power, with these responsibilities, it's not allowed, it's not okay. Is that the reason? Is that the intention?
Okay, so I'll give an example. I'm South African. I come from South Africa. And a few years ago, our president was imprisoned for corruption. Okay, so he got into corrupt activities. So we created a democracy. So firstly, South Africa was a country that was dwindled in apartheid. And I'm sure all of you know Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela came out of prison and we became a democracy. And it was Nelson Mandela was the president. We had another gentleman by the name of Thabo Mbeki. And the third president, who was also part of the ruling party, got into corrupt activities with some business people, and he was put in prison. Okay, and you wonder, you know, in a country like South Africa, it's quite a developing country. Why would the president be put in prison? And this created a lot of havoc, you know, because I mean, you know, what does it say to the world? What does it say to the world about South Africa? And the reason there was a commission that was built, and the reason they've done this is to give the people the encouragement that there is a justice system. There is a justice system, and the law is, or individuals or politicians or corrupt individuals are not above that law. So no matter who it is, even the president of the country, if he's got involved in corrupt activities, he needs to be brought to book to answer for those corrupt activities. And this is the reason why the law is there. The law is there to enforce that nobody is above it. Nobody, no matter who you are, is above it. Now, I know maybe you're going to ask the next question. Some countries do write laws that are politically affiliated. I mean, we have this all the time. So they do write in an act or a law that has some sort of political affiliation to make a ruling party or a party happy. But then you have, for example, your United Nations, or you have bodies of, you know, other governments that then will help to repeal these laws. So they will, in South Africa, why are you writing a law to protect a corrupt president? This is not right. South Africa, if you continue to do this, we will not trade with you. So there's other countries and other regions that will come into play.
So much for the question. Now, for context, I've been recently writing a paper on the extent to which religion affects the universality of human rights. And that brings me into another question. I'm Sri Lankan, and the economic and political state of my country is not at its best. And I was currently reading on ICJ submissions to all you MUNers out there, the International Court of Justice. And I was looking at it, and on May of 2022, they submitted a bunch of human rights violations of my country. But it takes around 7+ years, to essentially find justice for this country or kind of really enact on those violations. Within that time gap, can't they just repeat what they're doing over and over again? And it's this constant cycle. And even though we're saying this in the name of scrutiny, those 7+ years, is it worth it when this country continues to repeat its history of human rights violations? And this is not just seen in Sri Lanka. This is seen across the world in a multitude of countries. So how are we going to mitigate that? Is there any way? Is there a possibility? Or is it just this back and forth rabbit hole that we're entering where there really is no answer to it?
So that is what I have just mentioned, the challenge of enforcement of international human rights mechanism. So although we have so many international agreements, we have Court of Justice, we have the UN system itself, we have the International Criminal Court. But if you see the volume of violations of human rights going on in the different countries, and the volume of the enforcement, actually there is no enforcement because it is voluntary. So no country can voluntarily go and submit itself for justice. So it is very challenging. This is why there are other mechanisms for example, for the UN Security Council, they impose some sanctions. So they impose sanctions on countries, but countries always, they can find their ways to survive and to just continue in these violations. Same is going on in my country. In Sudan, for example, we have war, we have so many, and even our president, former president, was indicted by the International Criminal Court. Still he is there in Sudan. They are not able to even nobody can enforce it, this decision from the court. So it is this challenge, and if there is no way to enforce this these regulations, these violations is going to continue, as you have mentioned.
Thank you. In regards to human rights and these violations that we see, let's take a hypothetical. Would it be better to live in a world where the United Nations or these kind of treaties or these international powers would have more power or more authority to kind of enforce these violations? Would it be a better world or would it be worse? Sorry. Would it be better to live in a world where, for example, the United Nations has more power to essentially enforce or force a country to follow these human rights, to kind of correct their violations in human rights? Would it be better to live in that hypothetical or that world?
Yeah, see, also we have to look into it from, there is international politics also here, plays a role. When it comes to the voting system in the UN Security Council, so there is a political interest. So it is not purely human rights system that motivate country to vote for any decision. It's political interest, political relations. We have seen so many times, for example, there are 5 countries that they have the veto. So that, for example, the US can stop any decision, for example, or China, or wherever. So it's balancing political interest with the need to protect human rights is also another challenge. So there are so many issues, yani. So it's an area which is really depending on international organizations, local efforts. You have talked also about miscarriage of justice, and so in the area of human rights, for example, if there is conflict within the specific country and there is so many violations going on in this conflict, with regard to international human rights law, international humanitarian law, and there is peace negotiation. So this peace negotiation, there is a dilemma between trying to reach a deal with, for peace and application of serving justice. So serving justice, if you want to try those perpetrators who commit violations, they will never sign peace, unless there is, for example, a good deal for them to just avoid being tried for these crimes. Now there is, after so many research, so many debates and discussions in this area, they came into a middle way, which is transitional justice. Transitional justice means there is, reparations, there is a new system in handling this. So, justice can be served in different ways, not necessarily through trials and criminal courts and all this. It can be through reparation, through reconciliation commissions, like what happened in South Africa, what happened in Rwanda after the genocide. So all this, people are creative here. So it is not only one way which lead to justice. There are different ways. Okay, thank you.
Can I just add to that? But I want to ask the audience, our lovely students here. So I have a question for you. There are rules. There are rules that govern your every day of your lives. Brush your teeth, eat a healthy breakfast, get to school on time, do your homework, all of these things. Now, how many of you do those things because it's the right thing to do? And how many of you do those things because you're scared of the consequences? So raise your hand if you do what your parents, your teachers, or what the law says because you're afraid of the consequences. Yes, consequences drives us. Now, some of those things you may do because they serve you. It's good for you. You do your homework not because you're scared you're going to be punished, because you want to do well in life. You want your teachers to like you. You want a good reference. And so we have to think about law in that way too. How do we actually implement the law and get people to comply with it? And that's why I always talk about what I love about studying law is, what is the law? Where does it come from? Why do people actually follow it or not follow it? And unfortunately, we're very consequences driven. And so with something like human rights, countries need to fear for their international reputation, or that other countries won't trade with them, sanctions and things like this. And unless bodies have powers to do that, and unless they actually care, because it's becoming quite apparent that we live in a world where far too many countries and governments don't want to serve human rights because it's the right thing to do. They don't necessarily actually care about human rights itself. They don't care about justice. So we have to think about the consequences that we can place for not upholding those systems and values. But it seems that we're living in a world where the values that underpin things like human rights are no longer really that valuable. Countries don't fear for their international reputations. They don't really care what others think. And even our own governments don't care what the people think. And so I think that's why studying law now is a really interesting time. Studying law with international relations, studying geopolitics and the way that the law is shaping these things is so important, because we need to see change. We really need change, and young people today are going to be those change makers.
There's just one thing that I just want to say. In law, one of the first things I studied was absolute power corrupts absolutely. So no one body, no one person can dictate a decision. That's why the law is there, with various components. That's why government is separated from the judiciary. It's separated because if government influences judiciary, the law, the decisions, the application will be totally biased. And it would be inconsistent. You need to create a safe environment for the people, a fair environment for the people. And that's why law is always evolving. It cannot be static. And because of that, we as lawyers, we don't have one answer for anything. There will always be debate. This is part of law. There will always be debate. And there's one thing I also learned in law: there is no right answer. There is no single right answer. There are a variety of right answers. It is not a science. It's not math. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. It never is. Here it can be 1 + 1 = 0. It can be 1 + 1 = 5. It doesn't matter. But what's important is to hear everybody's side and see which side you are more biased to. You may be biased because for any reason. For example, you like spicy food. Does it make the person who doesn't like spicy food less of you? No. It's just a different personality. The law cannot differentiate that. And so as a lawyer, you kind of try and manage that. And it's very difficult. It's very challenging. But it's a challenge we all do every day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Richard. And with that, we would like to conclude my entire tangent alongside our panelists on human rights violations within countries. That was supposed to go into both corporate law, but we went towards that. Thank you so much. Can we please have a round of applause for our amazing panelists? Thank you.
To thank our panelists, we would like to give them a token of appreciation. So if you guys could please stay on stage.
While we're waiting, I know the schedule is a little bit off right now, but are there any questions that the audience has for any of the panelists? Anything you guys would like to know about law at all? If you do, let us know. We'll bring a mic to you. You can ask them. Otherwise, they should be here for a little bit after the panel, so if you see them in the hallways, you can always talk to them, for sure. All right. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone, we'll be dispersing to our workshops now. Let me show the list once again. Is it possible? Oh yeah, you can click here to scan take out your phones. You'll be able to see our workshop schedules. If you look at your wristband, once again, there's going to be a colored sticker, one of the 5 colors of red, black, green, blue, or yellow. Over there, you'll be able to navigate your way through the hallways. There will also be volunteers. Volunteers, can you all raise up your hands and wave at them? Say hi. Say hi. Yeah. So our volunteers will be able to navigate you through our workshops, and we hope you enjoy. Thank you very much.
Can we have all the volunteers to the front, guiding everyone to their workshops according to the stickers? Thank you. Everyone can proceed to leave. Thank you.